The desert stretched out in front of her like an endless wound, red earth, dry wind, and the ghosts of men who'd never made a home. The sun burned low, turning the sky the color of spilled whiskey. Somewhere in that dying light rode Alara McCoy, the last of the McCoy Ranch bloodline, and the only one still breathing because of hate. 5 years ago, she had watched her father fall to dust, a bullet tearing through his chest while the barn burned behind him. The man who shot him wore a black duster, silver spurs, and a face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The locals called him the Silver Cowboy. She never forgot that name. She never forgot the sound of her father gasping her name, or the cold wind that came after. Now, riding alone across the flats, she was no longer Alara McCoy. She was Nora Blake, a drifter, a woman with no home and no past. At least, none she'd admit to. The cold at her hip wasn't for defense. It was for justice. The trail led her to a place called Dustwater, a border town built from sand and regret. Horses lined the street, men spat tobacco on the ground, and the saloon doors swung to the tune of an old piano. She hitched her mare and pushed through the doors, the smell of smoke and whiskey heavy in the air. Eyes turned. She was tall for a woman, lean and sunburned, her hat pulled low, her gaze sharper than the blade on her belt. She ordered whiskey, didn't drink it, just held the glass and listened. And then she heard it, the name she'd chased for 5 years. Cole Thatcher's back in town. A ranch hand whispered to another. Silver spurs, scar under his left eye. Swear to God, man looks like death walking. Her pulse kicked hard. Cole Thatcher. The name felt like a blade pressed against her heart. She turned slightly, pretending not to care. This Cole fella, she said, her tone calm. What's he ride for? Used to hunt bounties, the man replied. Now, I reckon he's hunting peace. Peace. She almost laughed. The saloon door creaked again, and the room went quiet. A tall man stepped in, long coat, sunburned skin, eyes like gunmetal. His spurs jingled softly as he crossed the floor. The scar under his left eye caught the light. Cole Thatcher, the man who had destroyed her world. He didn't look like a killer now. He looked like a man who'd been carrying ghosts for too long. He ordered a drink, didn't notice her at first. But when his gaze finally met hers, something flickered. Confusion, maybe recognition. Name's Cole, he said after a moment, tipping his hat slightly. You new on this trail? Alara almost said her real name, but caught herself. Nora, she lied, just passing through, looking for work. He studied her for a long second, then nodded. Could use a hand on the trail north. Dangerous ride. Pays fair. She smirked. Danger's my kind of company. He looked at her, really looked, then gave a short nod. We leave at dawn. That night, in her rented room above the saloon, Alara sat by the window, watching the stars. The man who killed her father slept just down the street. Tomorrow, she'd ride beside him. Her hand trembled as she opened the locket around her neck. Inside was her father's faded photograph, and a bullet shell she'd pulled from his chest. She held it tight and whispered, I'll make you proud, Pa. I'll make him pay. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains. Inside, Alara's resolve burned hotter than the desert wind. At dawn, 2 riders left Dustwater, one seeking redemption, the other revenge. Only one of them knew how much blood still bound them. The first days on the trail were silent. The land stretched wide and lonesome, and the only sounds were hoofbeats and the low cry of distant hawks. Cole Thatcher rode a few paces ahead, his hat pulled low against the sun, while Alara, Nora, as he knew her, kept to his shadow, studying every move he made. He was careful, deliberate, almost too gentle for the man she'd imagined. The killer she'd dreamed of for years, the outlaw who'd burned her home and shot her father, wasn't supposed to fix her saddle strap when it slipped, or hand her the canteen before she even asked. When they camped the first night, Cole sat by the fire with his back to her, sharpening his knife, his silhouette tall and quiet. She watched him through the haze of smoke, waiting to see the cruelty she remembered. But all she saw was weariness, a man who carried sorrow like a second skin. You ever lose someone? She asked, breaking the silence. He hesitated. the knife paws in his hands. "Everyone loses someone out here," he said finally, "but some losses, they follow you longer than others." She looked into the flames. "And what do you do with that kind of loss?" Cole stared at the fire for a long time before answering. "You keep riding," he said softly. "You keep hoping one day you'll stop seeing their face every time you close your eyes." That night, Ilera dreamed of her father, his voice echoing in the wind, asking her why she was still chasing ghosts. She woke with tears on her cheeks and Cole already tending the horses. They rode through the next days in silence again. Storm clouds gathered, dark and heavy, until the world broke open with thunder. Rain came hard and cold, drenching the earth. They found shelter in the ruins of an old homestead, a cabin long abandoned, its roof half collapsed. Cole got a fire going while Ilera stripped off her soaked jacket, her breath trembling from the cold. Lightning flashed through the gaps in the walls. "Here," he said, handing her a blanket. His voice was quiet, rough, but not unkind. "You'll freeze if you don't warm up." She took it reluctantly, her fingers brushing his, and for the briefest second, she felt the warmth of his hand, the same hand that had once pulled a trigger and ended her father's life. Later, as the storm howled, their horses panicked outside. Ilera ran out into the rain to calm them, slipped in the mud, her leg twisting under her. Cole was there in an instant, catching her before she fell again. His hands were strong but trembling as he checked her ankle. "You're hurt," he said, his voice strained. "It's nothing," she hissed, but pain lanced through her. Cole carried her back inside, his coat soaked, his breath uneven. He tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped her ankle carefully. "You're tougher than most men I've known," he said with a faint, sad smile. Ilera looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she saw the regret in his eyes. Not the emptiness of a killer, but the guilt of a man haunted by every life he'd taken. When the thunder faded, he spoke again. "There was a ranch once, south of here. I took a job to catch a rustler. Turned out I was wrong. Man had a daughter, little thing. He wasn't who they said he was. I shot before he could draw." Her heart froze. He was talking about her father. Cole didn't notice her trembling. He stared at the fire like he could still see that night. "Been trying to make it right ever since," he whispered. "Never can." Ilera turned away, pressing her hand against her mouth to stifle a sob. He didn't know. He didn't know the woman sitting beside him was that little girl grown up. She could have drawn her gun right then, ended it, avenged her father, but her fingers wouldn't move. Her heart was too full of something else, confusion, pity, love. The storm passed before dawn. The desert air was cold and clean, and a pink light stretched over the hills. Cole saddled the horses while Ilera stood in silence, her chest aching with the weight of everything unsaid. When he handed her the reins, his voice was soft. "You all right?" She nodded. "Yeah, just tired." He gave her a small smile. "We've all been tired for a long time." As they rode on, she realized the trail had changed. Not the land beneath them, but the road inside her heart. For the first time since her father's death, Ilera wasn't sure what she wanted more, vengeance or him. The days that followed were quieter still, heavy with the weight of unspoken things. The desert rolled out before them like an ocean of rust and gold, and the air shimmered with heat. Cole Thatcher rode a little closer to her now, as if afraid she might vanish with the dust. They spoke more than before, not much, but enough. He told her about the men he'd hunted, the lives he wished he could forget. She told him stories too, but they were lies stitched from half-truths, a brother she never had, a home that no longer existed. Every word she spoke built the wall higher between who she was and who she was pretending to be. And yet, she found herself smiling when he teased her about her stubbornness, laughing when he cooked badly or cursed at his mule. It felt wrong to laugh at the man who had once destroyed her world, but it felt real. One evening, they made camp beside a river, the first water they'd seen in days. The sky burned violet, and the firelight painted his face in flickers. Cole looked younger then, almost gentle. He handed her a tin cup and said, "You ever think about stopping? Just laying down the gun?" She stared into the flames. "No," she said. Stopping means forgetting. I can't forget. He nodded slowly. Then maybe you ain't ready to forgive. His words cut deeper than he knew. She turned away, hiding the tremor in her breath. Forgiveness is for the dead, she said. He didn't argue. He only looked at her with that same quiet sadness that made her hate herself for feeling sorry for him. When she couldn't sleep later, she walked down to the river. The moonlight rippled over the water, cold, silver, perfect. She took out her locket, the one with her father's photo inside, and opened it. She whispered, "I'm close, Pa. I'll do it soon." But the words sounded hollow now, like a prayer she no longer believed in. Behind her, a twig snapped. She turned, startled. Cole stood there, watching her. "Couldn't sleep either," he said softly. His gaze dropped to the locket in her hands. "That your family?" Her fingers clenched around it. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Someone I lost." Cole nodded, stepped closer. "You keep their face close. That's good. Keeps you honest." His eyes flicked toward the locket again, and something changed in his face. His hand trembled as he reached for it. "May I?" She hesitated, then handed it over. He opened it slowly, and the fire died in his chest. The moonlight caught the picture inside, a smiling man with broad shoulders and warm eyes. Cole's breath broke. The color drained from his face. "I know this man," he whispered. "God help me. I know him." Elara froze. Her throat went dry. He looked up, horror dawning in his eyes. This was a rancher. The one eye. Her voice snapped like a whip. "The one you killed." The world stopped. The wind, the river, the fire, everything went still. Cole's hand shook. You're his daughter." Her gun was already drawn, the barrel gleaming under the moonlight. "My name isn't Nora Blake," she said, her voice trembling. "It's Elara McCoy. You murdered my father." Cole didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't even move. His voice came out raw and broken. "I didn't mean to, Elara. I swear to God, I thought he was someone else. I've lived with it every day since. I try to make it right." "You can't make it right," she screamed. Her hands shook, her finger hovering over the trigger. He took a step closer. "Then end it. You have every right. I won't stop you." Tears blurred her vision. For 5 years she'd imagined this moment. Her vengeance, her father's ghost finally at peace. But now, looking at Cole's face, the regret, the exhaustion, the quiet acceptance, she couldn't do it. Her hand dropped, the gun falling into the dirt. "Damn you," she whispered. "Why couldn't you just be a monster?" He flinched like she'd struck him. "Maybe I was," he said quietly. "But not anymore. Not since you." The confession hit her harder than any bullet. She turned away, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. "I can't do this," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't hate you anymore." Before he could speak, she grabbed her pack and ran, mounted her horse and rode off into the darkness, leaving him standing alone under the moon. Cole watched her disappear into the night, the locket still in his hand. He sank to his knees by the fire, whispering into the emptiness, "I'm sorry, McCoy. I'm sorry for everything." And in the distance, the wind carried Elara's cry, half grief, half love, across the endless desert. 3 days passed since Elara left Cole Thatcher in the desert. 3 days of dust, silence, and a heart that refused to settle. She rode until her horse stumbled from exhaustion, until her lips cracked under the sun. Every mile should have brought her peace, but instead, it only deepened the ache inside her. She had her vengeance within reach and couldn't take it. The man she'd hunted for years was still alive, and worse, he'd taken something else from her now, her hatred. When she stopped at a trading post near the border, she heard the whispers first. A shootout down by Crimson Canyon. A bounty hunter cornered by the Delaney gang. Outnumbered 5-1. Her heart stopped. Cole. Without thinking, she turned her horse south. The wind whipped her hair, her eyes burned, and her chest felt like it was filled with fire. The man she'd sworn to kill was about to die, and she couldn't let the world take him from her before she said what she needed to say. By the time she reached the canyon, the sky was bruised with smoke and gunfire echoed off the stone walls. She saw them, A half circle of outlaws closing in on a lone figure crouched behind a boulder. Cole's coat was torn, his arm bleeding, but his gun was still steady. Ilera didn't hesitate. She rode straight into the fray, rifle raised. Her first shot dropped one of the outlaws before he could turn. The second hit another in the leg. The gang shouted in confusion. A woman on horseback, charging through dust and led like she'd come out of hell itself. Cole looked up in disbelief as she slid off her horse and took cover beside him. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice hoarse. "Neither should you," she shot back. "You're terrible at dying alone." He gave a faint, broken smile. "Guess we're both fools." The next wave of gunfire thundered across the canyon. They reloaded side by side, hands moving in rhythm. When one of the outlaws tried to flank them, Cole spun and fired, saving her life. When another aimed for him, she returned the favor. For a moment, it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them, back to back, the way fate had written it long before either of them knew the other's name. Then came the sound Ilera dreaded, a single sharp shot, different from the rest. Cole gasped and stumbled forward, a red bloom spreading across his shirt. "Cole!" she screamed, catching him before he hit the ground. He gritted his teeth, still tried to raise his gun, still fighting. "Stay with me," she cried. He smiled weakly, blood at the corner of his mouth. "You ride better than half the men I ever knew." "Shut up," she whispered fiercely, pressing her hand against his wound. "Don't you dare leave me." But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were already fading. "Ilera," he whispered, "you were right to hate me, but you were kinder to me than I ever deserved." "Don't talk like that," she said, choking on tears. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Now I've paid my debt, to him and to you." Her breath caught. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew who I was." He nodded faintly. "Since the night by the fire. I just wanted to see who you'd become before I went." Her heart shattered. She held him tighter, but his hand fell away. His last breath left with a whisper. "Thank you for loving me anyway." The canyon went quiet. Smoke drifted through the air, the last outlaw long gone. The dawn came slow, painting the sky gold and red, the colors of love and blood. Ilera sat beside Cole's still body until the sun rose high. Then, gently, she took off the locket from around her neck, the one that carried her father's face, and placed it on Cole's chest. "Now you can rest," she said softly. "Both of you." She buried him beneath the old cottonwood at the canyon's edge, the silver spurs glinting in the light. Years passed. Travelers through the desert sometimes saw a lone rider near Crimson Canyon, a woman with fire in her eyes and a silver spur on her boot. She ran a small ranch nearby, quiet and peaceful, never spoke much of her past. But every sunset, she'd ride out to that old tree, sit beside a weathered grave, and talk softly into the wind. They say the desert keeps its ghosts. And on still nights, if you listen close enough, you can hear two voices, a woman and a cowboy, laughing together under the stars.